Hello, everybody. This is the autobiography of yours truly, the counselor, Mr. James Horton. My name is James Lamont Horton, and I was born October 21st, 1967, at Mount Zion Hospital in San Francisco, California. My mother's name is Arma Horton, and my father's name is James Arthur Horton. I have an older brother and a younger sister. My brother's name is Joseph Lafayette Horton, and my sister's name is Frederica Monique Horton. My infant years were very hard years for my family and I because they were filled with different forms of abuse, mental as well as physical. Our family home, unlike most family homes, was very much a dysfunctional place to have grown up in. At a very young age, I had problems learning how to do things like being able to recite the alphabet or even being able to sing the alphabet to people like my teacher, mother, or anyone else for that matter, especially the one person whom I feared the most, which was my father. Now that I have grown, I now understand the fear of being beaten by my father for not knowing these things contributed greatly to my inability to learn. My father had problems with his own self-being, and he projected it in an aggressive manner daily. My sister did not go through the physical abuse like my brother and I, but she did receive the mental abuse from having to watch and listen. This was a time when my sister was very young, and she was like a sponge soaking up everything around her. She constantly took notice to everything that was going on. My mother's share of the abuse was the hardest to endure, physical and mental abuse that went on night and day. My mother, to this day, has proven to me how much of a woman she is because when the time came, she made a conscious decision to leave her, to leave my father and to get herself and her three children out of the situation. My father was not only an abuser to his family, he was an abuser to himself. He was a heroin addict. Around the age of 7 years old, I can recall walking into the bathroom and seeing my father lying unconscious with a syringe in his arm. But as time went on, I began to hear rumors in the neighborhood that my father had a drug problem. But at that time, I didn't care what kind of a problem he may have had. I only wanted the rest of my family to be safe and have a life, any kind of life away from this one. In the year of 1979, my mother met a man by the name of Marvin who ran his own roofing company and was willing to help us any way he could. During that same year, he moved us to Oakland. I must say it felt good to finally feel free. Marvin was truly a helper that my family and I will never forget. He was a real man, one of few that I have encountered. But before I continue my story, I would like to say that I'm very grateful for the number one helper and protector who has always loved me, my God. At the age of 15, I began to let my guards down and allow myself to be influenced by my peers. I believe I was looking for acceptance from the people in my surrounding area. I remember the first time a friend in the group I was hanging out with asked me to smoke some weed with him, and I did just for the sake of fitting in. At that time, I could not allow anything to interfere with the stature that I had now built myself up to be. Joining the gang and going to other neighborhoods to fight other youth was another pastime that I also regret. The majority of the time, we joined in these types of behavior for no reason at all, except to be one of the guys. We felt we had to prove our strength by fighting in numbers. At the age of 16, I sold drugs. I knew my mother would be very upset with me, so I hid this part of my life from her and the rest of my family. I remember when I bought my first car and how I would hide the car around the corner so my family wouldn't see it. I would also hide the clothes that I bought. And before going to school, I would change clothes in the car. The influence I allowed the group to have on me began to escalate. It escalated to my first use of the drug called cocaine, the same drug I had been selling. Cocaine gave me a more intense high than the weed I had been smoking. It had a different effect on my behavior. I could feel myself changing. I began to feel that my life was in danger and I needed to change, and not just from using and selling drugs, but also from those influences who I called my friends. I remember telling my mother that I was messing up and having problems and that I needed to get out of Oakland. She never asked me to tell her what was going on. She was just ready to help me in whatever way she could. So she called her father, my maternal grandfather, and arranged for me to move to Henderson, Texas. My trip to Texas was truly an ultimate experience for me. The dynamics that were going on in the city of Oakland were totally different than the life I would now live in Texas. My grandfather lived on a farm which was located in a wooded area. Instead of bathrooms, there was an outhouse. There were also hogs, chickens, and possums, which were our daily meals. I can recall going into the back kitchen, making myself something to eat. I thought I was eating a piece of chicken and later became physically ill when I found out I was eating squirrel meat. But aside from the few things that I viewed as abnormal, the experience that I shared with my grandfather are forever embedded within my memory and are irreplaceable. I learned a lot from my grandfather, and for that I am truly grateful. After 6 months in Texas with my grandfather and the chickens and the hogs, I was ready to go back home to Oakland, California, to my loving family. When I returned home, things were not going well for my family. They were having a lot of financial problems. These problems caused my mother to be forced to filing for bankruptcy and barely having any money to buy food. I remember talking to my mother and telling her not to worry and that I was going to get us out of this situation that we're in, but that I'm going to have to earn some money in a legal way. I returned to the fastest way I knew how to make money, selling drugs. So I was able to get us back on track and even able to become pretty tactful at selling drugs. I'm referring to it as tactful because success would be an insult to the word. Success has nothing to do with selling drugs. Being tactful comes into play when you do not get caught. At the age of 24, I made a decision to try a new drug. Heroin would now become my drug of choice. Upon my introduction to this new drug, it was the fad to snort it through the nose. I was told that the drug was an aphrodisiac and that it would make me more of a man and that I would gain high points with the ladies. I soon became addicted to this drug and began to use it as I woke up and before I would go to sleep at night. I could not get through a single day without it. It was just that powerful. I get. I would also snort cocaine with this heroin. This was called speedballing. I forgot to mention that I was diagnosed with being an insulin-dependent diabetic in the year of 1985 when I was 17 years old. I started to get really sick as I continued to use the drug. The use of the drug became more important than taking care of my diabetes. I would go days without taking my medicine due to the fact that I was only concerned with getting high. At this time in my life, I began to change mentally as well as physically. I did not see it, but everyone around me did. My mood would change. I became prone to going in and out of jail. Violations of probation and possessions of drugs were my causes of incarceration. I was in and out of courtrooms on several occasions. I later became a known visitor. In the year of 1993, I was arrested for possessing a $10 bag of heroin. This arrest ultimately changed the course of my life. I was brought to court to be sentenced by a judge by the name of Jenkins, a man who I didn't know at the time would leave his imprint on my life. He was like no other judge that I have ever encountered. He had compassion and was there to do more than just a job. He eventually introduced me to a program within the walls of the Santa Rita Jail, the Deuce program. This was my first grasp at recovery. I completed the program and was released from jail and continued my recovery. As a condition, as a condition of my probation, I was ordered to show up to court every 60 days for a progress report. Judge Jenkins expressed publicly to the entire courtroom his satisfaction with my progress. Eventually, my good standing would come to an end. I began to slip and use again. Earlier in my story, I expressed that I was a diabetic and how it affected my health when I used drugs. During my addiction, I became a patient at Highland Hospital of Oakland on several occasions. In fact, several does not compare. Tried numerous occasions. On one of these occasions, I saw a black man of medium height walking down the hall towards my room. It was the Honorable Judge Jenkins coming to see me, a Superior Court judge. Can you believe it? I must say it was someone who cared enough and believed in me. In the year of 1999, I was arrested for a first-degree burglary and was facing 4 to 6 years in prison. I was incarcerated for 11 months. I can recall writing to my mother and apologizing for all the hurt I had brought upon her, my family, and myself. At this time, I was ready to get my life back. I eventually got into a program, and it laid the path, which this was written, you all, in 2001. I accomplished 2 years and 9 months of cleanliness and recovery. I am now attending Merritt College, earning an associate's degree in substance abuse counseling, and looking forward to pursuing a bachelor's degree and eventually a master's degree in psychology. I am now enjoying my new life with its new offerings and looking forward to getting my education and dealing with my clients that I serve daily at the Anna Temple Social Service Ministry, where I am a substance abuse / anger management facilitator, the counselor. Yes, sir, the counselor. It's been a long ride. This is my gift to you. Enjoy it. Play it over as many times and share it with a friend. All right? Share it with a friend. Tell them about the counselor. Later. Thank you for attending my class.